Hello everyone, this is Venom, and we are back for another Destiny 2 build video. Today we are going over the Shadow Hunter build. Now this is going to be a build that is not meant for Grandmasters, but is going to be meant for at-level content or raids or dungeons. Now before we get going too far, I want to make something very clear because there might be a misconception about how some of these builds work. Just because a build is not rated for a Grandmaster does not mean it is a bad build. You want to make sure you've got the right tools for the right jobs. I've made videos before explaining that for Grandmasters you typically want to have utility versus damage type builds. But for lower level content or at level content, such as, your campaigns, regular raids, regular dungeons, seasonal stuff, you typically want to have stuff that's going to cause more damage and help you get through, bosses or help you get through enemies quicker versus utility type stuff. So that's what you kind of want to remember for these builds. So just because this build is not one you would typically want to take into Grandmasters, this is still going to be a very, very good build for what it's supposed to do. And of course, I got to give the obligatory, yes, technically you can bring this into Grandmasters. However, it's not going to be as effective as something that is specifically built for Grandmasters. So, again, just because I say that this is not made for Grandmasters does not mean this is a bad build. In fact, this is probably my main build outside of Grandmasters for like day-to-day play. So, that being said, this is actually going to be a build that revolves around the Gyrfalcons Hauberk. I'm going to go ahead and get started here, reading off what it does, and I'm going to explain what it does practically after I read what it does on paper. So, first off, it says, see me, feel me, which got me in trouble when I was in high school. But anyway, it says, your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. When you are invisible and defeat a combatant using a finisher, all your weapons gain bonus damage. You and your allies gain a reserve overshield and improve class ability regeneration. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. So what does all that mean? It means that while you are invisible, if you hit an enemy with a finisher, you're going to have an overshield that you can deploy. You deploy it by using your class ability. Now, your opponent or your teammates can also do that by using their class abilities, but of course, for the hunter is dodging. So you get a reserve overshield, in the bank. You can use that whenever you dodge. You're going to get that overshield. You're good to go. The main thing is going to be that first part of the perk that is going to make your weapons have volatile rounds. Now, fun fact, when this exotic first released, the volatile round portion of that was actually a hidden part of the exotic. They actually added in the wording later on, but it's always actually giving your weapons volatile rounds. Before we thought it was a bug. Luckily, it is not, and it is one of the best exotics for hunters, hands down for void hunters. Now, first off, before we even get to the build, we've got to do what we always have to for our builds. For any kind of invisibility hunter, you have to make this thing just look as edgy and dark as possible. So before we even start, we're going to go ahead and give ourselves the correct makeover first to be that, awesome shadowy ninja that we know and love. All right, much better. Let's go ahead and get into the build here. All right, so first off, for our aspects, we have got the Stylus Executioner aspect. The Stylus Executioner is going to be the backbone of this build. Now, what the build is actually going to allow us to do is going to allow us to essentially stay invisible, have an overshield, have Devour, have volatile rounds at all times. Okay, I'm going to say it again. We're going to be able to be invisible, have volatile rounds, an overshield, and have Devour on at all times. Okay, or at least between every other kill, but pretty much all times we're going to continuously refresh what it does. The way we're going to be able to do that is going to be using Stylus Executioner, and what it does is defeating a weakened, suppressed, or volatile target grants invisibility and true sight. After performing a Stylus Execution, your next melee attack or invisible weakens targets. Basically, if you kill an enemy using any kind of void debuff, again, whether it's weakened, suppressed, or volatile, and volatile is what we're going to mainly be using, it's going to make you invisible, and it's going to proc a myriad of other things we're going to be going over. Now, the next aspect is going to be somewhat flexible. Personally, I highly, highly recommend using Vanishing Step. Along with the Marksman's Dodge to reload your weapons. That's going to help you with boss damage later on. You can technically use the Trapper's Ambush, but I do not personally recommend it. You will get like an extra second on your invisibility when you do it, but with this build, you really don't need that extra second because it's constantly going to be up. On top of that, Vanishing Step, again, is going to be much quicker to make you invisible and is going to reload your weapons when you use your Marksman's Dodge. Now, of course, like I say, we're going to be using Marksman's Dodge. We're not going to be using Gambler's Dodge. We're not going to be worried about our Snare Bomb too much for this one, although we will still use it to weaken enemies. Again, triple jump like always, or Snare Bomb, we've got no choice. And of course, Vortex Grenade is going to be your best bet. And in fact, it's going to be even more important because we want the most powerful Ward Grenade we can get that's going to do the most damage in the widest radius. That is, of course, going to be the Void Grenade. Now, next up, we want to use the Echo of Persistence. That's what we normally are going to want to have for a Void Hunter build. Typically, because it's going to extend your invisibility, your overshields, and devour, we're going to have all three of these, so we want those extended to as long as possible. Echo of Obscurity is always a good one to have on any kind of invisibility build. This is one that grants finishers, or gives you invisibility when you use a finisher. Echo of Starvation is going to be the next one, and it's going to be picking up a Void Breach or Overpower will grant you Devour. This is how we're going to be activating Devour, so keep that in mind. So, making a Void Breach or an Overpower are going to be very, very important for this build. Void Breach especially. And next up, finishers will create a Void of Burst damage and will cause enemies to become volatile. And defeating a volatile target creates a Void Breach. That second part is what's very important here. Defeating a volatile target creates a Void Breach. Now, going back to what we just said before, picking up a Void Breach will give you Devour. You're starting to see how this is going to play into itself. Now, next up, this is the first time I've done a build where weapon perks matter. Of course, the weapon types are going to matter as well, but the weapon perks are going to be very important here. Now, for weapon perks, we're going to try to find a weapon that has a Repulsor Brace on it. Now, what does Repulsor Brace do? Well, it is a Void perk. When you defeat a Void debuffed enemy, it's going to give you a Void Overshield. It's going to be one more way to get a Void Overshield on. Now, I also highly recommend having Destabilizing Rounds or the Demolitionist perk. Now, here I've got my Word of Crota I have on Destabilizing Rounds. This basically makes any nearby targets that you defeat close to the main one volatile. So this is one more way to get volatile without even needing any of your skills. So how does the build work? Well, we're going to start off by turning invisible by dodging. Okay, we're going to get into combat. Once we dodge, we're going to turn invisible, and we're going to go ahead and take out an enemy. Once we do, our chest piece is going to grant us volatile rounds. Defeating an enemy with volatile rounds will proc Stylus Executioner. Defeating an enemy with that is going to give us the invisibility, and is going to reproc our volatile rounds once we come out of that new invisibility. Now, to get the Devour, we're going to need to pick up a Void Breach, which we're also going to get by defeating a target with our volatile rounds. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate here. So here I am. I'm going to dodge. Okay, I defeated a target. You see I got volatile rounds. There it goes. I'm now invisible. I've got invisibility. I've got an overshield. But I do not have my Devour yet. To get Devour, I've got to go pick up the Void Breach. I pick it up. And I've now got Devour. In fact, I've got so many buffs that they don't all fit on screen right now. So I can now basically sit here and just get kills. Keep proccing Overshield, keep proccing my Devour. And it works with any Void weapons. You see, I'll swap to my sword. And you can see all I'm doing is refreshing all of these buffs constantly. So I can sit here all day and just continuously turn invisible. Now again, I also reload my weapon when dodging. And I'm just constantly spawning in Orbs of Power. I'm spawning in Void Breaches. I'm constantly healing myself, constantly getting Overshields. Now, as you can see, just by dodging and then taking out an enemy with a Void weapon, we were able to spawn in a Void Breach. We were then able to get Devour by picking up that Void Breach. We immediately got turned invisible again, refreshed our volatile rounds, and got a Void Overshield. All basically just by using that Stylus Executioner with our chest piece. Now, all the mods and everything we're going to add on, and all the aspects we've already gone over, and the fragments are just going to help with that as well. I'm going to go ahead and go over the mods now. Now, first off, our helmet mods. Like always, we're going to have one copy of Heavy Ammo Finder and one copy of Heavy Ammo Scout if we are in a group. If we are solo, again, 2 copies of Heavy Ammo Finder. On top of that, to add on your Harmonic Siphon to help us spawn in Orb of Power with with our Void Weapon kills. Next up for arms, 1 copy of Firepower. You can go ahead and toss on a copy of Heavy Handed. It will be a lot easier to get melee kills, powered melee kills with your Smoke Bomb in at-level content. Again, at-level content is going to be your strikes, going to be your regular campaign missions, going to be regular lost sectors, that kind of thing. It'll be a lot easier to get smoke grenade kills with Heavy Handed on this one. After that, I like to toss in Fastball just to help with that grenade distance. But after Firepower, really any other mods you want to add on here are going to be fine. If you want to add on something like Grenade Kickstart instead, or if you're having trouble with some of your stats, you can toss in like Final Focus or Fauna Vigor, but as long as you got in that Firepower mod, you're pretty much good at adding whatever you want to. Again, for PvE stuff, I don't recommend doing any kind of dexterity mods. You could do loader mods, but thanks to our marksman's dodge, you don't even need loader mods because by dodging, we automatically roll reload whatever weapon we have equipped, so those aren't really necessary at all. Next up, the big one for the chest piece is just going to be whatever resistance mod you need, along with your harmonic reserves. Now, I say harmonic reserves because, again, we're going to want to have if possible, a void heavy weapon. We basically want to have all void weapons if possible, so especially that heavy weapon. And, of course, I've got some recommendations for heavy weapons here in a minute, but the reserves will be the big one with every resistance mod you want. If you're running any kind of sword build, and I can go over a sword build later on. Loosen blades will be important, but really, again, for the most part, you just want the resistance mods and your harmonic reserves. Alright, next up for legs, we've got a couple options here. Now, the big one you want to have on is going to be the Void Weapon Surge. That will increase your Void Weapon damage while you are charged with light. That's one you're going to want to have on at all times because you're constantly going to be getting charged. After that, we've got a couple of options. Now, Recuperation is one I always recommend having on, period, just to heal you up when you're picking up those orbs of light. After that, you can either run Absolution or you can run Elemental Charge. I would probably recommend running Elemental Charge. That'll make it to where when you pick up a Fire Sprite, Ionic Trace, Stasis Shard, or Void Breach, or by destroying a Strand Tangle, you have an escalating chance of getting an Armor Charge. Basically, picking up Void Breaches, picking those up is eventually going to give you a chance to just get a Charge with Light versus picking up an Orb of Power. Alright, finally got the class mods. Reaper is going to be definitely going to be a needed one on this one. This one makes it to where when you use your class ability, in this case dodging, you will spawn an Orb of Power on your next kill if you get it quick enough. It used to be you can just dodge and you can just get the kill whenever. Now you got to get the kill quickly after dodging, but it should be very easy at the level content we're going to be doing this with. Next up, Proximity Ward. Again, I always recommend having this one on, especially on any invisibility build. Proximity Ward is going to be great. Even though we're doing lower level content, this isn't for Grandmasters, it's still a good idea to have on Proximity Ward because you can still die when doing finishers. And then finally, I like to use Special Finisher, just because I like to use Wither Horde when I'm running this. Really, you can use whatever you want to. I'd say if you wanted to use something else, you probably would want to use Powerful Attraction, but really any other mod you would like to fit in here, you can. Hello everyone, Future Venom here, and me being the genius I am, I completely forgot to record what the stat spread was for the build before I finished up the last video. In fact, I didn't even realize I forgot about it until I started editing, so here are the stats you're going to want for your build. So, right here you can see I've got 100 mobility for my Hunter. I typically try to max out that mobility stat for my Hunter no matter what build I'm doing. For at-level content, it's not as necessary to get max resilience as it is in something like a Grandmaster. However, you still do want to pump it up as much as possible. Because of the way stats are spread, it's almost impossible for a hunter to get both max resilience and max mobility without compromising their build, or without getting an exact perfect rolled set of armor. Typically for this build, you do want to try to get your mobility to 100. That is your class, gonna govern your class ability, which is gonna be your dodge. Discipline would be my next as far as priority goes. You see I've got mine up to 100. That'll get you your grenade back quicker, and then whatever else you got left, go ahead and dump into resilience. If you really want to get 100 resilience, I would go ahead and get up to 70, and then go ahead and then use the chest armor mod, Font of Endurance. What that does is when you pick up an Orb of Power, it's going to give you an extra 30 points to your resilience. So basically, as long as you have your armor is charged, you will have 100 resilience. So if you really want it that bad, go ahead and toss it on. I usually have it on myself if I'm really worried about it, but you can take it off. It's really up to you. But if you want to go and do that, that's when these blue mods come in handy. These blue mods give you extra stats. So yeah, again, sorry about that. Forgot to add in the stats the first time. So again, mobility, discipline, and resilience. I would not worry about melee too much at all. It's just a smoke bomb. You're not going to be relying on it too much. And if there is any build that relies on a smoke bomb, we typically are going to still boost up our mobility because we can just use our Gambler's Dodge to automatically get back our melee charge. So keep that one in mind. Now, finally, we're going to be going over some of the weapon perks that I talked about. Now, the one I recommend is going to be Repulsor Brace, because that's going to help you get Overshield and keep your Overshield on longer when you're getting Void Weapon kills. Now, here on my Light GG, I've showed this website off before. This is one that is going to show off all the weapons in the game. Right now, I'm currently showing all the weapons you can get the Repulsor Brace on. So you can see Age-Old Bond is a really good one. I've got it. You can get this one out of the Last Wish raid. It's also craftable as well. What else do we have here? We got a few grenade launchers with it. Like I said, Water Crota, that's my go-to weapon. That is my personal favorite as far as hand cannons. Commemoration is another one. It is a heavy weapon. It is a machine gun. You can get this one out of Deepstone Crypt. And finally, we have the Unforgiven. It's an SMG. You can actually get this one out of the Duality Dungeon, so it's a really good one I like. Now, some other weapons and perks you can use with this one. I personally like to use my Quick Fang, my class sword. It is a Void sword, and essentially lets me make a sword build for the Hunter. Now, of course, it's going to rely very heavily on heavy ammo, but this is a very good sword that I like to use, and it's a very fun playstyle. Another one you can do is going to be a machine gun. Depending on whether you're doing ad clear or whether you're doing boss damage, I've got two different recommendations. If you're doing ad clear, the Commemoration machine gun is a great one to have. It has Subsistence, which will automatically reload itself when you get a kill, and it's got Repulsor Brace, which of course is going to give you that overshield. It also comes with the Brazen Inheritance intrinsic trait, and that is dealing damage regenerates a small amount of ability energy. So it's a very, very tiny amount, but any little bit helps. The other one I recommend is going to be for bosses. This is the Retrofit Escapade. This is one I crafted that has 4 times the charm on it, along with target lock. It's got the ambush or the Zero Synergy traits on them. I let you use ambush. It just improves range, handling, and damage against combatants during the opening moments of an engagement. Basically, when you first start firing, it's going to increase all the stats in your gun. So this is one I like to use for boss damage. It's not going to do the absolute most damage out of this. It's not going to do the most damage out of this build. You can do more damage with other weapons, but this is one that's very solid. It's got good ammo economy. It's personally one I like to use a lot. Again, if you're going to be mainly doing ad clear, Commemoration would be the one to go with, I think. But as far as boss damage, I'd go with Retrofit Escapade. Now, for your main weapons you're going to be using, again, I use a Water Crota. This is one that comes out of a raid if you're unable to do raids. Funnel Web will probably be your best bet. This is a world drop. I've got one with Subsistence on it, which again is going to reload you. This is a really good, solid submachine gun. For a while, it was considered the best. I think it's still one of the most used weapons in the game. It's a really solid submachine gun, so this is one that works perfect with this build. Again, some others that will work with it as well. We got the La Monarch, that is the exotic Void Bow. And of course, you've got the Buried Bloodline, which is the exotic sidearm, which is a rocket sidearm, which is out of the newest dungeon. Of course, if you can't get that one, it is RNG. You're going to be better off using, again, something like Funnel Whip. So that is this build. Again, this is one that is going to be perfect for at-level content. This is probably I would say that this is the other side of the coin of the Omnioculus build. People like to compare the Gyrfalcons Hauberk to the Omnioculus because they both make you invisible. And again, I've talked about Maddox on my last video when I talked about the Omnioculus. He made a good point on how you should look at these, and that these are used for specific things in the game. Omnioculus is great for Grandmasters. This is great for at-level content. It's two sides to the same coin. And I mentioned it before, just because something's great for Grandmaster does not mean it's going to translate to working great in lower level content. When you're doing Grandmasters, it's more about survival and avoiding taking damage. So you're not really too worried about standing there and doing a ton of damage to a boss, for boss DPS phases or that kind of thing. In fact, there typically aren't boss DPS phases for Grandmasters. It's just staying alive and do what damage you can to the boss. There's not typically an overshoot you gotta try and take down. Now, for stuff like campaigns or for strikes or especially for raids, you do have those. So you do have to worry about things that are not typically worried about in Grandmaster, such as boss damage phases, such as ad clearing, or such as doing, puzzles and things. So you want something that's got some utility, but you want to be able to take out enemies quickly too and do lots of damage to bosses. So, so that's going to do it for today, guys. This was the Shadow build. This is based around the Gyrfalcons Hauberk. Thanks again for coming by. This is, again, the second build I like to use versus the Omnioculus if I'm doing Grandmasters. This is what I use for day-to-day stuff, so definitely one of my favorite builds. I want to thank you guys again for coming by. I am starting to link these videos to my shorts. I'm going back and linking the full builds to the original shorts I did, so if you go back and look at those, you'll see I'm starting to link these over there, so hopefully I can draw more traffic over, but, again, that's going to do it for today, guys. We got more content coming out as always. It is time to start some Warlock full builds on the channel, so I'm going to bring you a couple of Warlock builds next. I did 2 Titans, I did 2 Hunters. Now it's time to go ahead and knock out 2 Warlock builds. So we're going to do that. As always, I'm going to give a sneak peek to the build we will be showing up at the end of this. Past that, thank you all for coming by. Please sub to the channel if you like what it is that we're doing. Please, if you like what we did. And again, if you have any builds that you specifically want to see or specifically want me to build, please let me know down in the comments. So that's going to do it for today, guys. And here's a preview of the next build we're going to be doing.